Hello? Hello? Hi, everyone. Welcome to the uh, official DNC Disability Caucus meeting. I call this meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for taking part in this community's advocacy. You're all an incredibly valuable part, and I can't tell you how much I and the caucus, which you make up, very much appreciate it. My name is Derek Devermont. I am your chair. I'm going to keep my remarks brief and limited to that as we are running a tiny bit late, and I thank you all for your patience, though. First, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Stand if you can. If not, be in whatever position is comfortable. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Someday. So, the first thing I want to do is we have a special guest. And as we know, those with disabilities can often be overlooked, pushed aside, not given the consideration and respect that is deserved and needed. But at the LA City Council, Los Angeles City Council, luckily, we have an ally. And that ally is Los Angeles City Council President-elect Marquise Harris Dawson. And he's very kind. Clap, clap. He's very kind. He is a fierce advocate, and he's here. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to him.
Thank you so much.
How are you? Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a seat. Oh.
Good morning, everybody. Come on, good morning, everybody. This is such a joyous week and a joyous occasion. Can we give a big round of applause for the folks who put on this convention? We're at the last day. It's been such an amazing rally and party and activity to get us in gear to do what we need to do in the next 8 weeks to elect Kamala Harris to the presidency of the United States. In the city of Los Angeles, we are committed to a city, a county, a state, a nation where we do everything we can so that every single person who wants to can live out their full and highest potential. And so that means making a way so that everybody can do that. I'm super excited, and I wanted to be here today to acknowledge this caucus, to greet this caucus, and to say hello to this caucus, because I have the honor and privilege, along with 3 of my colleagues, to be the official representatives for Los Angeles 2028 Olympics to in a couple weeks, to the Paris Paralympics that'll start on the 2nd of September. And when when the Paralympics are over, the Paralympic flag will be given to me and other members of the City Council, and we will bring it back to Los Angeles where it will rest. And we will prepare. Everybody talks about LA 2028 Summer Olympic Games, but also the Paralympic Games will be in the city of Los Angeles in the summer of 2028. And so we want to do it big. We wanted to show the world how we do it here in the U.S., but it starts with building the kind of client that supports that work, and there's nothing more important in the immediate future than electing Kamala Harris and defeating Donald Trump. So thank you all for everything that you do. You always have an LA and Los Angeles. If you need us to talk bad about some of those counties and states that make it hard to vote, we don't do that in LA. But some of those places that make it hard to vote and put all kinds of barriers up, you can count on us as an ally and someone who can yell loud and scream loud on behalf of justice. So again, thank you all for having me so much.
Thank you all, and thank you, council member. Thank you for being present today. It actually means a lot. Next, we're going to go into legislative wins. And I had the fortunate privilege of appointing a vice chair to the caucus. And our vice chair for fundraising is the ever powerful Janie Lair-Stein. Last time when I appointed her, and I talked to her about her a little bit, and I won't be too redundant, I pointed out that I used the term force of nature, and that is certainly what Ms. Stein is. She has raised, I think, $1 million in her organization for the campaign to elect the first female president, called Raise Every Voice. Called Raise Every Voice. That is having a fundraiser on September 26th called Raise Every Voice. I keep repeating it, hoping you all will go. So without further ado, it is my privilege to call her up to handle this panel and her panel. And so everybody, put your hands together for Janie Lair-Stein.
I can stand.
Microphone's right in front.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call my cohort up here with me to introduce her in just a moment, but I think I have to start out by saying I may be blind, which means that I have no vision, but I can very clearly see that today may be the most fortunate day of all of our lives. It's electrifying, isn't it, to watch what's going on around us? And the other reason I think I'm one of the luckiest women on the planet is because I am able to share that experience and witness this phenomenon with so many people who are just like me, people with disabilities. So thank you for being here. And I'm going to ask Marcy Roth to join me on the podium, please. Just going to wait for Marcy to get up here so I can introduce you. Hey, Marcy. You want to talk about an unstoppable force. You are looking at one now. Marcy Roth and I have had the tremendous privilege of knowing and working with each other for many, many years. She is a tireless advocate. She has spent the last 30 plus years working her way from helping people advocate for themselves to the Obama administration, where she became the nation's expert on emergency situations and handling natural disasters and preventing injuries to our community. And she currently is on vacation. Oh, need to get closer? I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Had no idea where it was. She currently is on vacation from her position as the executive director of the World Institute on Disability, which I'm sure all of you know is one of the most renowned and historic organizations which advocates for our community, not only in the United States, but around the world. So I'm very fortunate to be joined by Marcy today, and we're going to do a little tag team stuff. I have to say now that the third reason that I really feel like I'm the luckiest person alive is that in 2019 I was privileged to be one of, to be Kamala Harris's disability policy advisor. Today, one of the news agencies published a story in which they acknowledged that Kamala Harris was the first candidate in 2020 to come out with a disability policy, and they presented it to the world again today. So here's the thing, I may have written down those words, but we created them. That was us. So it's my tremendous pleasure to spend just a couple of minutes talking about our candidates. I want to start with Coach Tim Walz. I haven't met him personally, but I served on his rules committee for this convention and was able to observe that he is everything that everyone is saying about him. Tenacious but patient, engaging but inclusive, a member of our extended community because he has a child with a disability. And if you haven't yet read the People magazine article, I encourage you to do so because he speaks in such fully appropriate terms about the love he has for his 2 children, and what he loves the most about them is that they are unique and talented in their own way. And that's just where we want to be in the future, embedded in society, included in everything. Tim Waltz is responsible for holding up the example of Minnesota as one of the best in terms of providing supports for families with disabilities. He specifically took on agencies when he became governor to ensure that inclusivity was embedded across every state office in Minnesota. And most recently in June, he saw to the passage of a bill that helps parents of children with disabilities who are accessing Medicaid to avoid some of the complicating fees for the money they so desperately need in order to be sure that their children are fully included and can live their own American dreams. Then there's Kamala Harris. I'm from San Francisco. We claim Kamala as our own. I could not be more confident or more excited about a candidate in terms of inclusion of the disability community than I am for our Kamala. My husband and I have been in California for 30 plus years, and so we first heard about Kamala Harris when she was starting her career as a prosecutor. As you can imagine, she is, shall we say, like the rest of us, a fierce advocate. When she became Attorney General for the state of California, one of the first and most prominent cases that she prosecuted was in the defense of a firefighter who had incurred a disability but wanted to remain on the job. And as we all know, when we fight, she wins. As senator, thank you. As senator, Marcy and I both had the tremendous privilege in 2017 of marching with thousands of other people with disabilities on the Capitol in defense of the Affordable Care Act. And there was Kamala alongside Nancy Pelosi promising us that our pre-existing conditions would not lead to a denial of benefits under their watch, and it hasn't. So something else that we can say we have done with the community. But now we get to the Kamala who's vice president, and the list of accomplishments that we can talk about is literally longer than this meeting would run. But let's just start on the first day of the Biden-Harris administration, when 2 executive orders in the first moments of the administration were put into effect. They are 2 distinct areas of importance to our community, and they were put into effect because a talented, diverse, and incredible group of advocate stakeholders, experts, our friends, our colleagues, were part of a policy task force that was listened to. So on the first day that Biden and Harris went to work, they enacted an executive order that mandated inclusion and accessibility across every agency in this country. And, go ahead. And they created for the very first time, and hopefully into the history books for perpetuity, a position for the Director of Disability Policy who sits on the Domestic Policy Council. We went from there to a lot of hard work on the ground, which I know many people in this room or who are watching on live stream were instrumental in achieving. And as I said, it's hard to pick among the many things that have happened that have enriched the lives of Americans with disabilities, but here's just a few. My favorites have happened very recently, in just the last few months, when we saw regulations issued under Title II of the ADA to ensure that there is digital inclusion for people like me who have sensory disabilities. In addition, we saw regulations under Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act go into effect, which provide for accessible medical devices and inclusion for people with disabilities seeking health care. And let me just tell you a little bit about that. I had the privilege of serving in the Obama administration for 2 terms on the National Council on Disability, which is the agency that advises the President, Congress, and the nation on our disability policy issues. One of my most honored jobs at the NCD was to advocate for people to have accessible medical equipment, and on December 1st, 2016, we saw that regulation go into effect. And on Inauguration Day in 2017, at 12:03 p.m., that guy in the presidency rescinded the regulation. He also took down the website, so there was no disability website for the White House for people with disabilities. But here's the good news. 2 months ago, that regulation came back, and now people with disabilities can now count on the fact that they can demand accessible medical equipment for things as basic as mammograms for women. I know many people in this room remember with tremendous respect Marka Bristow from our community, who passed away several years ago, and Marilyn Golden, who passed away recently. 2 wheelchair users who died of breast cancer. That doesn't have to happen anymore, thanks to our presidential candidate. Let me just mention 2 other things, but honestly, my list goes on and on. One of, I think, the quietest things that have happened that people maybe don't appreciate yet is that disability was designated as a health disparity by NIH about 4 or 5 months ago. What that means is that NIH funding will be available to provide the metrics that we need in order to create the framework that we need so that we can be fully engaged with our families and our communities and the nation. Here's an example. I'm a mother of 3, proud grandmother of 1. It would have meant so much to me to be able to take that news to my dear husband, who you met on Tuesday, but I couldn't because a pregnancy test is inaccessible. This health disparity designation is going to open up the entire field for accessible testing, accessible medical appointments, further research to enrich our lives and make a huge difference for all of us in our day-to-day functioning. I'll probably cut it there because I want to talk a little bit about the bigger issues that are so important and the reason why Kamala Harris is a candidate for us. And I'm gonna get emotional, so get ready. In 2019, as we talked, we were able to create a very comprehensive platform for people with disabilities as part of Kamala Harris's primary campaign. It was remarkable to me how available and accessible she made herself on this subject. Well, we all know what happened, and we are so delighted and proud that our President, Joe Biden, thank you, Joe, pointed to Kamala Harris to be his running mate and Vice President of the United States. So the conversation didn't end. 2 weeks after the Dobbs decision, I was in Washington, D.C., and asked to meet with Kamala Harris's policy director, which, because you know I'm an advocate, as we all are here, I was due. And they said yes. It was literally July 6th, though Dobbs had come down 2 weeks before. Well, I did my COVID testing. I went into the office. I sat down, and all of a sudden in the hallway, I heard that magical, joyful laugh. And I thought, okay, Kamala's going to say hi. She likes to smooch my companion dog right on the nose. We're going to say hi, and then we're going to have this meeting with the policy director. Instead, Kamala came in with the policy director, sat down, and said, Janie, so tell me what Dobbs means for your community. And we all know what Dobbs means for our community. First of all, it has a devastating impact for women with disabilities, both for those who are assaulted but do not have an avenue to raise their voices, and if Dobbs continues, will be forced to carry unwanted pregnancies that it's quite possible they never intended or even understand. But on the flip side of that, there are those of us like me who desperately wanted to have children and were advised not to, because how could a blind woman take care of one, never mind 3 children? So we are on both sides of this coin here on the huge issue of choice. Yes, it is choice for women, but yes, it is choice for us, because we know that Olmsted stands for the fact that we get to make decisions about our lives regardless of our disabilities. Once again, I can go on and on through all of the points of her platform, but the point is we're embedded in it. As we fight for reproductive choice, we fight for that for our families, and we fight for that for women with or without disabilities, and it is one of the most noble goals, I think, that we will see progress on in the next 4 years. So then there's Kamala the person. Of course, you've heard she's extraordinary. You've witnessed the fact that, like us, she is a fierce advocate. But she also happens to have all the characteristics which define our community. First of all, she is tenacious. Well, we're tenacious. We shut down a federal office building in the 1970s to obtain federal protection and support for people with disabilities decades before the Occupy movement was even conceived. And that movement was led, the Occupy was led by our beloved leader, Judy Heumann, who passed away last year. Think of what she would be doing with us in this room today. Oh my God. So she's tenacious, and we're tenacious. We occupied that office building. There are people in this room who literally crawled the steps of the Capitol in support of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And as we've discussed, in 2017, thousands of us converged again on the Capitol to defend and maintain the Affordable Care Act. So she is tenacious. She's a fighter. She's one of us. Then there is the thing I think of as kind of the second characteristic of our community, and that is empathy or compassion. When I was working on the disability policy during Kamala Harris's campaign, my husband suffered a very serious car accident, and I missed a meeting. I gathered my children at the hospital. He went through some very intense surgery and injuries, but as you can see, he's here with us today. And in the middle of the night, as we sat with him, in comes the text, Janie, this is Kamala. We heard about Lenny. What can we do to help you? This is the president that we want to have in the White House. Let me tell you that she is also our Madam Joyous warrior. I am one of the many lucky who have received a birthday call from her. And it was stunning and thrilling and more proof that she doesn't see us as people with disabilities. She sees us as her colleagues or who are fighting hard to make life better for Americans with disabilities everywhere. And then there is that third category. Just as She is empathetic and compassionate, just as she is tenacious. She joins us as the community that stands for the respect for dignity of every American. We all know that this fight is the biggest one in our lives, and the words of our iconic leader, Justin Dart, all those years ago, are equally true today. He said, we have to vote as though our lives depend on it, because it does. And this candidate understands that there is no question that the 70 million Americans with disabilities, our families, friends, supporters, loved ones, colleagues, employers, are going to stand there too. So I can say with confidence that we are probably the luckiest generation of Americans with disabilities, because we have been heard by the woman who will lead us forward and embed us in this remarkable journey we're about to undertake. So I hope you're all asking yourselves, so what can we do right now? Because now it is my tremendous honor and pleasure to turn the proceedings over to Marcy Roth, who will talk to us about what the Disability Council and then Caucus has become, and how every single one of us is going to get to work right now to make sure that we elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as our leaders. Thank you so much. Here you go, Marcy. You want to sit? I'll go down. Oh, maybe not. I guess I'll sit on the stage. I'm being told by Shiloh.
Jenny, we have a wheelchair to your right. Hold on, just go straight. Chairs in front.
Hey there, everybody. This is such an incredible gathering of disability community leaders and colleagues, and we are here because we will do anything to get Kamala elected.
So unfortunately, we don't have time for Q&A today. We're running way behind. I apologize. But I do want to thank both these speakers. I hope I can meet your expectations. I hope the caucus can.
We're going to hold you to it.
Marcy, you scare the hell out of me. So,
I should.
all right. So let's hear it for these two speakers. Yes, ma'am.
We need you to have a mic, Kath. Yes.
I'll get you.
Good. Come on in. It's a family.
I'm Kath Delaney, also one of the co-founders of the Disability Council, working with these incredible women since 2007. I know many of you have had a very, very difficult week, and I apologize. I think it's really unfortunate, and we have listened to your concerns. We have worked our darndest to try to move people from A to B, from B to C as best we could. And as an organization, we have failed. And as we move into hopefully a new administration and the next convention, we have to take ownership of the logistics and how we move each other around and how we care for each other, right? Because we keep asking for folks to help us, and they're trying their darndest, but they just don't know. Some do, but some don't. So please, please, if someone tonight is in the hall and trying to get somewhere and they don't have the support that they need, please try to ask folks to just, for a sip of water, if you could take a breath. I know a lot of people weren't even able to be seated last night. So we are doing our best to move people tonight in the most efficient and calm way that we can. Thank you.
Thank you for those words, Ms. Delaney, and thank you for those issues. I was planning to address them, but I don't think I could have spoken quite as eloquently as you, and I very much do appreciate you. Thank you, and thank you for being such a fierce advocate. And if we could give you a round of applause. Okay, but we are running low on time. Sorry if I seem frazzled. I have a terrible headache. Next, we're going to hear about polling on the disability community in the 24 election. For that, we have Mac Pugh. Mac Pugh is a senior analyst, and I would go deeper into his bio, but unfortunately, we're running low on time. So please welcome Mac Pugh.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to touch on a lot of the same stuff that the two speakers before just brought up, but I'm going to put some numbers behind what they said, and I'm going to say why it's not just good policy, why it's good politics. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted a lot here, but as we all know, this is a big vote winner, both in terms of people with disabilities voting, but also it's popular across the board. Addressing issues that impact people with disabilities is it's a set of policies that have a large trove of votes that are left off the table for us, that we as Democrats could win, could use, because it's very possible that this election could be decided by a few thousand votes in 1 or 2 states, and having more Democrats or people with disabilities vote, and addressing issues that help people with disabilities are popular. So that's why we as Democrats need to address the needs of people with disabilities. When I was asked, I should say, to present on these findings, the thing is that we haven't done a lot of survey research on these issues since the 2022 midterms because there just aren't a lot of groups out there who are actively trying to do research on groups with disabilities. However, we do what you'd call an omnibus survey every 2 years, in even-numbered years around the election, and we are one of the few, as far as I know, the only polling firm out there who asks people in our surveys whether they have a disability or whether have friends or family who have disabilities. So we do have research on it, but it goes back a couple of years just because there isn't a lot of research on it. And I think that speaks to how much of an underfunded, under-researched issue this is, that again, there is a trove of votes out there left on the table that we could get that we do not have. When looking at what issues are important for people with disabilities in particular, some of the ones that come up are healthcare, Social Security, and prescription drug prices. And these are issues that, number one, Kamala Harris leads Trump by vast margins on already. We're not going to alienate any voters by addressing the issues that are important for people with disabilities. It's only things that Kamala Harris already leads Trump on. And there are also issues that help voters, not only voters with disabilities, but voters overall. People with disabilities are more likely to have expressed a range of challenges relative to voters overall. They're more likely to say that they have serious mental health issues, that they've had to postpone getting medical care, including prescription drugs because of a lack of money or resources. They're more likely to say that they've had to use free food or use food pantries. They're more likely to have had to leave a job because they weren't able to get the help they needed and deserved. They were more likely to say that they had to skip meals or went hungry because there wasn't enough for them to afford food. They were more likely to say that they've been unable to afford childcare, and they're more likely to say that they've lost their home because of eviction or foreclosures because they were unable to pay their rent or their mortgage. There's a huge gap in turnout between all voters and voters with disabilities, particularly for presidential elections. In 2020, the voter turnout was 68.8%, so 69%. Among people with disabilities, it was 58%. So that translates to millions of voters. People who were voters we just left off the table, not necessarily out of choice, but because, as I'll get at, there isn't the knowledge of how many barriers exist for people with disabilities to vote. What's that? There is the knowledge, but as I will get to, it's not widespread. It's people with disabilities know about it, but most voters don't. Voters with disabilities are also way more likely to say that they've experienced difficulties with voting way disproportionately than voters overall. It was 3 times as high in 2022. It was twice as high in 2020. It was around 3.5 times as high in 2012. So it's a persistent problem that people with disabilities disproportionately experience problems with voting. As I just referenced, people, when we do focus groups on this subject, they do not know about the issues that many people with disabilities face. And they think that it's already, they just assume that, yeah, people who have trouble literally walking into a place to vote, a polling place, they just assume that it's equally accessible for people with wheelchairs. They assume that people who physically cannot fill out their ballot have the help they need, and they don't. They don't know that, that this is a problem. And when they find out about it, they are outraged. And as far as I know, it depends a lot on the local area, but there is one party, one presidential candidate who has made it a priority to address these issues, and there's one candidate who has not. And this is an issue that we can use to drive a wedge, to drive a contrast between the two candidates. Solid majority of voters believe it is very important that candidates treat people with disabilities with dignity and respect. We found in our survey 83% of voters said that. That is absurdly high. And that includes Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And I think that there's one candidate this election who treats people with disabilities with dignity and respect, and one that does not. Thank you. 60% of voters believe it is important that congressional and presidential campaigns address issues that are important to people with disabilities. And this, again, has across-the-board support. We could ask about support for baby kittens, and there would be partisan divides on it. We don't see, or we don't find numbers that are this widespread across the board ever. I will show you here that I will read it here that is 68% of Democrats say it is very important. Almost all of Democrats say it is very or somewhat important that we address that congressional and presidential candidates address issues that are important to people with disabilities. Among independents, it is 59% say it is very important. Among Republicans, over half, 52% say it is very important. This is both a persuasion and a turnout set of issues addressing the needs of people with disabilities. People want their candidates across the board to do that. But it's something that we don't necessarily stress as much as we could. And people don't know that Harris and Biden has had agencies make voting and registering to vote more accessible with people with disabilities that Trump did not. And if we elect Trump, he's going to take away a lot of those rights. People don't know about that, but that's something when they hear about it, they can change their minds on who they're going to vote for. We asked, this is from another pollster, asked voters, do you disagree with the following statements? Leaders in the federal government care about people with disabilities. Voters overwhelmingly say that the federal government does not. Overall, just 7% of voters agree with that statement. 27% of voters somewhat agree with that statement. So 34% of voters agree with it. 59% do not. It's something that voters recognize as a problem. They just don't realize the full extent of. And we need to fill in the blanks as Democrats as to how we can, as to what Kamala Harris and the Democrats are doing and what we can do to help people with disabilities and drive the contrast, because Trump and the Republicans are not and will not. As I said, we're going to win this election by both driving out our base and by persuading persuadable voters to vote for Kamala Harris and Democrats down the line. And this is an issue that can help with both of those. Was it? Okay. Policies that help people with disabilities also help the wider community, and people recognize that. Because when you make more wheelchair ramps, when you make sidewalks more accessible for people with disabilities, that helps mothers with strollers, that helps fathers with strollers. That's right. People recognize all of that especially when you connect the dots for them. And this is also an issue that you can connect to other issues that are extremely important for a lot of voters. Think of how many veterans there are with disabilities who need help, who we can message on that subject. And helping veterans is off the charts popular. Helping veterans with disabilities is extremely off the charts popular. Similarly, helping people in rural communities is off the charts popular. And a lot of what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have accomplished have disproportionately helped rural people with disabilities. And again, that's something we can message on. A lot of the infrastructure package help people with disabilities in rural communities. Yep. So we asked people on voting with disabilities and how it will impact whether or not they'll vote and who they'll vote for. 86% of people agree that voting on issues that matter to people with disabilities can bring about change. They think it's a great thing, morally speaking. However, 66% of people said issues around disability and healthcare influence how motivated they are to vote. And it in particular helps if you connect issues with disabilities and healthcare. So you want to combine them both a lot, because they're already combined in a lot of people's head. And over half of voters, 57%, say that candidate stances on disabilities, on issues around disability, influence who I will vote for in this election. So it also is a persuasion tool, as I said. So long story short, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz has a record we can run on, and Donald Trump is going to bring us back to a time, to an administration that disrespects people with disabilities, and we need to let people know that, because Kamala Harris is committed to standing up for freedoms and opportunities for all Americans. Thank you. Thank you. Great job. Great job.
So, moving on. You know, it was brought up about areas of improvement, specifically within our party and the convention, for those with disabilities. And we have made strides, and there have been successes. But it's interesting. It seems that the more successes we have, the more glaring the remaining deficiencies become. And how much harder we all have to work to correct them. And we shouldn't have to work hard to correct these things. But that's where we're at. And it's not going to get better without that. So, there are those that are doing the work. And in this realm, there are names that ring the loudest. There are bells that when they go off, people go, oh, I know who that is. That person does the work. And one of those is Leslie Templeton, who chairs Young Democrats of America Disability Caucus. You can clap for her. Don't wait for me. Leslie doesn't wait for me. I wait for Leslie. Leslie has held prominent roles, including, as I said, co-chair of the Young Democrats of America Disability Caucus, co-chair of the Massachusetts Democrats Youth Subcommittee, Disability Outreach and Policy Director for Political Campaigns, and former Women's March board member and co-founder of the Disabled and Pro-Choice Coalition. There's nothing more that I could say. She has a panel. I'm going to let her introduce them. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Leslie Templeton. 10 minutes.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to be here. We're going to be speaking about getting young people involved, young disabled people involved and engaged in campaigning. I am going to be bringing up Seamus Campbell, who is the former chair of the Young Democrats of America's Disability Caucus and one of my mentors. Absolutely adore him. He's done amazing work in New York, organizing young disabled people and organizing people around Brooklyn. I'm also bringing up, there we go. I'm also bringing up Austin. Austin is my chief of staff, Austin Jackson. We have been on the Disability Caucus together now for how many years? 7 years. It's been that long. So we all met each other through Young Dems. And if you're unaware of what Young Dems is, it is a collection of thousands of young people around the United States who are organizing together around democratic causes, working closely with the Democratic Party to engage young voters. And we specifically work with young disabled voters. I'm so excited to speak to you all today, and let's hit it off. Austin, would you like to start?
So I would, for the record,
little closer to you.
Yes, it's a little close. Of the YDA Disability Caucus from 2017 to 2023, I believe it was, and I'm also incredibly involved in South Carolina's chapter of the Young Democrats of America, called the Young Democrats of South Carolina. So.
Yeah, and then, James, would you like to go a little bit quickly?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is James Campbell, he, him pronouns. I am a white male with brown hair wearing a blue skin white shirt. So, previously, as was mentioned, I am chair emeritus of the YDA Disability Caucus. So, Leslie is my phenomenal successor, and she has done so much more than I can ever think of. But currently, I am the chair of the New York State Young Democrats Disability Caucus for my fourth non-consecutive term, because they just won't let me go away. Um, and also, I was the founding chair of the then DNC Disability Council's youth committee. So we were trying to do a lot of outreach there, especially with the 2020 election. And you know, everyone in this room knows that 1 in 4 Americans has some sort of disability, and our job was really trying to engage our community there and try to say, here are our issues, and this is the candidate. The then Biden-Harris ticket was the ticket that we needed to engage or engage voters to support because they were going to be fighting for our issues.
This is Leslie Templeton again. By the way, let me do a brief image description. So sorry, I forgot. I am a white woman with red hair. I am wearing a black mask and a tan suit. I would love to start off by maybe we'll talk about what are some great ways that you've seen campaigns engaging with young voters. I know personally, or young disabled voters. I know personally it has been active outreach to young disabled people, looking for organizations in their areas to see who is involved, who wants to get involved. We currently are working, I've been working on a few campaigns in Massachusetts where we've been working to get young disabled people around, give them spots on these campaigns, not just volunteer positions. We want to make sure we are employing disabled people, not just giving them volunteer positions and photo ops. Right? Because we deserve to be held with dignity and work with dignity if we want to. We are currently working with ensuring that all these campaigns are using alt text. It is a great way for all disabled people, but especially young disabled people, especially on social media, to be engaging with your content. If you want that disabled vote, if you want the vote of our community, you need to make sure that you're doing the work to get that. And that means making sure your campaign is accessible. That means having ASL interpreters. That means doing image descriptions. I could keep going, but I know we have brief time, so I'm going to throw it over.
All right. So for the record, I am a black male with blue glasses, a black and white houndstooth jacket, wearing a white shirt and pants. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. But anyway, one of the main things that state and county
Awesome. I mean, I think those are all really great points. I think that
Also, to Leslie's point about something, or actually with making sure that we are paying people with disabilities, it's all interconnected. You know, one of the big issues for our community is the sub minimum wage. So we don't want, you know, if we're going to be actually practicing what we preach, we better be making sure that we're paying at least $15 an hour for anyone on a campaign, especially people with disabilities. If it was up to me, it'd be $30 an hour, but you know, campaigns only have so many resources.
Now, granted, to the benefit of to the benefit of 17 of those states, 17 states have already uh, eliminated some minimum wages. One of them being, surprisingly enough, my state of South Carolina, in a bipartisan bill that was fought for by the same system senators that fought and defeated a total abortion ban last session before the three Republicans in that system Senate group got voted out in a primary. But anyway, but the point being this: to get my points. We're if you cannot expect people to work for free. We don't expect it out of the people who run our campaigns. We do not expect it out of the people who run our governments. We don't expect it out of most private endeavors. Why would we expect that from disabled people who are offering their services to organizing candidates and organizing our parties at the same time?
thank you guys so much. I know that we're running out of time, so I'm going to close this out real quick. But I just want to remind you all that engaging young disabled people is one of the most important things that you could do in a campaign. That includes our elders in this space. Make sure that you're giving space to young disabled people. Give them opportunities. They want to see it. They need those opportunities from our people. If you're in a campaign right now, if you're running for office right now, look at who is in your communities. See who is making these strides. I'm going to tell you right now that it's not hard to find us. Again, 1 in 4 people are disabled. We're here, just find us. We're in your communities, we're your neighbors. We are your peers, your fellow employees. We want to be a part of this, especially, I think.
We want to advocate. Like,
Yeah.
if anyone has not seen it, go on YouTube and look for Leslie's testimony to Congress from 3 years ago. Telling stories, it's exactly what she was doing. She is saying to everyone, these are the issues that impact us, and this is how we can try to do better as a community and as a government.
Yeah, and like I said, as my friend mentor Amy Harrison once said about the Young Democrats of South Carolina, we're not the future. We're now.
Yes.
And that's true of disabled Democrats. It's true of young Democrats. That's true of everyone in this party. We're all living in the moment, and all we have is now. And frankly, what we have right now is to fight. And when we fight,
We win. So thank you so much for hearing us out. Please engage with us. We are the Young Democrats of America's Disability Caucus. If you are looking for young people to get involved in your campaign, you can reach out to us. We are on Twitter, Facebook. We have if you want to email us, ydadisabilitycaucus@gmail.com. We are not here for your inspiration. We are here to be your best friend or your worst enemy. Your choice right now.
One more time, that was YDA Disability Caucus at gmail.com. Write that down. I told you, right? All right. So next, we have a panel on preserving democracy, protecting our rights, voting in the disability community. That has been put together by CDP Controller Carolyn Fowler, who also sits on the DNC Disability Caucus Accessibility Committee. I'd go on for longer, but we are running short on time, so I'm going to let her introduce her panel. And come on up. You don't have to be shy. Get up here. Carolyn's not shy at all. And it's interesting. She doesn't raise her voice, but that's only because she doesn't need to. Madam Fowler, whenever you're ready.
Greetings, everyone. I am Carolyn Fowler, as described. I am an African American woman, medium brown, medium length hair. I am wearing glasses, pink and green, to match my sorority, AKA, which is the sorority of the next president. I have on a pink suit, a print pink and green blouse. I don't think you care about the shoes, but they're white. And I'm a senior, a proud senior, and a member, as he said, of the Accessibility Caucus. People with disabilities make up at least a quarter of the American public. In 2022, people with disabilities voted at a 7% lower rate. The U.S. polling places had at least 83% of difficulty for the disability community. To me, that makes this conversation that we're going to have in electing a president in 75 days even more critical. I'm going to introduce two activists in the community. I'm going to start with Hans Johnson. I'll introduce them, tell you about their background so you know that you have some real experts here, and then I'll give them an opportunity to speak for about 3 or 4 minutes on what they have observed. Hans Johnson is president of the East Area Progressive Democrats, the largest grassroots Democratic club in California with more than 1,100 members. From 2006 to 2012, he managed the Disability Vote Project with the American Association of People with Disabilities. The project used list enhancement to put power of voter information in the hands of local and state nonprofit leaders. The project also conducted training and nonpartisan voter contact that immeasurably improved the voter participation. Since 2013, Hans has advised translators and interpreters nationwide on protecting language access and including for the deaf and hard of hearing. That is Hans Johnson. Please give him a welcome. Dr. Shakari Byerly is managing partner of Eviteris, a full-service polling and strategy firm. Dr. Byerly has more than 20 years of experience in the field of polling, public policy, and strategy. Dr. Byerly has served as a pollster for Vice President Kamala Harris, Congresswoman Sidney Calmunger Dove, Cook County, Illinois Board President Tony Preckwinkle, the late Boston Mayor Tom Menino, and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, among others. As a member of the disability community herself, she brings lived experience to research on the issue of disability rights. Dr. Byerly holds a PhD in political science and a master's degree in public policy from UCLA. Dr. Byerly's work has appeared in the Journal of Urban Affairs and the Journal of the Center for Policy Analysis and Research, a publication of the Congressional Black Caucus. Please welcome Dr. Byerly. So Hans, I want to start with you since we are short of time, and let's just do this because we all know we have to do something, right?
That's right. Thank you, Carolyn. It's great to be back here, and I just want to give it up for Jenny Lehrer-Stein and her fabulous remarks kicking off this meeting. You know, I've spent years working with the LGBTQ plus community. We used to call our caucus the most intersectional caucus around, but I just want to give it up for this caucus and for the empathy and intersectionality reflected in Janny's remarks and in the work of this caucus. Thank you for that commitment to organizing people where they are across identities, intersections, Trump campaign that wants to reinstitute the denial of care rule, which actually put the horrible, gruesome, and grotesque power to deny health care to people selectively based on the biases of caregivers, including first responders. We know that patience and impatience at the point of care is a huge barrier to the humane care for people with disabilities across our country. And when you empower caregivers to discriminate and to be impatient, to deny care, we saw that and fought that during the first Trump administration. We cannot have that back. And we know that the policies of the Harris-Walz campaign and administration are humane and will remove barriers and move humane recognition and accessibility forward at every stage of our governance and at the community. So I just wanted to highlight that as one important innovation. But the second point, second takeaway I just want to offer today is an important point about translators and interpreters. The power of the community of people with disabilities. There's no single larger group than people who are deaf and hard of hearing among people with disabilities. And that community relies on trained interpreters for access in courts, in schools, and in every arena and form of public and civic life. So I just wanted to highlight that when we talk about the importance of the PRO Act, and many of us are strong supporters of the PRO Act, there is a provision of the PRO Act which unfortunately has the risk and the danger of sidelining independent interpreters and translators. And I want to make sure that people understand that the PRO Act can still be fixed. It's a very important legislation to minimize and reduce barriers to people forming and keeping a union, but Section 101B of the PRO Act does need to be fixed so that independent interpreters and translators can do their work, providing life-changing and life-enhancing access for people with disabilities, including the deaf and hard of hearing, who number around 4% who are deaf or seriously hard of hearing in our country. About 11 million Americans rely on interpreters, sign language interpreters, and it's a very important shift and an important correction in the policy that will preserve language access and the ability of trained professional interpreters to provide professional language access. And I have information about that, which I'd like to make sure that.
Thank you, Hans. Dr. Viley.
Thank you so much. I'm going to try to truncate my remarks so as not to repeat some of the good information that our colleagues have shared. The first point I want to make is when Republicans took the House in 2022, data on civic engagement suggests that it may be more difficult today to gain access to the ballot and civic engagement for those with disabilities than it was in 2020. We have lost ground and we must regain it. Nothing can be for us
So apologize for the short time. A lot of good information. We have a fact sheet. I'll hope you. Did we just sign-ins? Some kind of way we'll have to get that. It's all about the Biden-Harris administration and what they have done. For example, in the previous presenter, he talked about the $15 minimum wage. That is in the American Rescue Act. And there are other billions of dollars in opportunities that they've already demonstrated their dedication to. This is the Biden-Harris administration, their dedication to the disability community. And so, as someone pointed out earlier, the other side has not. So if you want to make sure that we have the team in place to ensure that we move and make the progress we need to make for our disability community, we need to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Thank you.
Thank you all. You got to be careful bringing Hans on the stage. Guy's a tsunami of energy. Trying to keep it calm in here, Hans. A little while ago, a few months ago, I got a call from Robin Jones. Who knows Robin Jones? Robin Jones handles a lot of the accessibility issues for the DNC, and she's a fierce advocate, and she certainly does everything she can. And she said, I have two organizations that would like to have a meeting with you. So I had a meeting with them over virtually. And we talked about what they could do, what I could do. And the one thing I said to them is, you know, after learning about them and what they do and the incredible, phenomenal work that they do, I said, the one thing I can do is I can give you a stage at the convention. And they said, that's fantastic. That's great. So they're here to do it. The first one is Amber Smock, Vice President of Advocacy for Access Living. She has served as Access Living's Director of Advocacy since 2010 and was recently promoted to Vice President of Advocacy. She is responsible for executing Access Living's advocacy vision through policy, community organizing, issue education. She guides Access Living's strategic partnership and significant networking efforts at local, state, and national levels across a range of disability topics, including healthcare, home and community-based services, housing, education, transportation, racial justice, immigration, and one that speaks to my heart, incarceration of people with disabilities. So here to give a presentation today is Amber Smock from Access Living.
I'm Amber Smock. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy for Access Living.
I would encourage everyone to get their info, get their contact info, contact them. Truly remarkable organization. Truly a remarkable organization that does absolutely remarkable things. The next organization that I found, to be redundant, remarkable, is the Chicago Lighthouse. Janet Slick is the president and CEO of the Chicago Lighthouse. The Chicago Lighthouse is a 117-year-old not-for-profit helping people who are blind, visually impaired, disabled, and veterans, and helps veterans build confidence and independence. Ms. Slick has been there since 2008 and has led the organization through a period of tremendous growth, particularly through a development of a number of social business enterprises which provide employment opportunities for clients and generate revenues for supporting organizations. Dr. Janet Slick, please.
Good afternoon. I know I'm at the tail end, so I'll be brief, but I do want to introduce you all to the Chicago Lighthouse. We're very proud in Chicago to have this facility. It's known across the globe as the most comprehensive organization serving people who are blind, visually impaired, disabled, and military veterans. We've been around, Derek, for 118 years, so we had a birthday. And we have been innovative throughout that career. In 1955, Helen Keller called the Chicago Lighthouse the shining symbol of progress, and we've been living up to that sentiment ever since. Our signature programs are low vision rehabilitation and blindness rehabilitation, education from infants to seniors, employment services for people with disabilities and veterans, and independent living and advocacy. So we are federally funded, we're privately funded, we're grant funded, but we also, what really supports our mission is our social enterprise. We have businesses that we've developed in the customer service and manufacturing industries that provide, right now we employ 800 people, a third of whom are mission-based individuals. So we're very proud. We've had more people now who are blind than ever before in our 118-year history that are employed by the Lighthouse. We have a number of home-based community service programs, which I was asked to speak on, but I'll just cover them in general. We have occupational therapists going into homes to fit the home for a person who has a disability. We have early intervention teachers who go into the homes and help the parents and child adapt to blindness when an infant is born with a visual impairment. We have adult living skills where adults have recreational, social, educational programs, adults who 22 and above who are blind, visually impaired, and have developmental disabilities as well. We have assistive technology program where we do job fairs in the community and assistive technology fairs where we introduce and demonstrate technology that allows people to get back to work. We pay, in response to some of the comments that were made, our minimum wage is $18 an hour, and most of our agents and employees are paid well above that. We really focus on knowledge-based jobs, promote from within, have 30% of our leadership has a disability. So we're very proud of that statistic. Employment is an investment that pays for itself. Given that 44% nationwide of working age adults are not employed, are employed, compared to 79% of those without disabilities. 62% of working age adults with disabilities are not in the workforce. Accenture did a study a few years ago where if we increased disability employment just by 1%, we would be infusing $25 billion into the GDP. So it makes sense for all. It's win-win. We're now beyond employment. We also have gotten into the housing industry. We are opening, ribbon cutting on a building that is affordable and accessible for people who are blind or visually impaired. It's a $40 million project, and it's funded by tax credits, low-income housing tax credits. And we learned from Chicago Cranes Business that it's the first time in this country that the tax credit vehicle has been used to build housing for people who have visual disabilities. We found that incredibly surprising that we could be a first in this area, providing accessible housing that also practices universal design. We are working with Access Living to identify individuals who are in need of housing and are ramping up. Our first tenants are moving in September. Some of the features that it includes are differentiated tactile cues on the flooring to indicate pathways, guide rails in the hallways, adjustable lighting, and Braille on the mailboxes, Braille on the apartment numbers, and Braille on the wallpaper. It's everywhere. So what do we need? We need more affordable housing. I know that Kamala Harris on Monday night in her impromptu speech talked about the need for affordable housing. And it's the case in Chicago. I'm sure it's across the nation. It's widespread. 25% of homeless people have a disability, one or more disabilities. That's criminal not to have a process. We have identified a vehicle to pay for these beautiful buildings. If I had my slide up, I'd show you our building, but you're more than welcome. It's on the corner of Wood and Taylor within the Illinois Medical District, Wood and Roosevelt. So other things that we need more employment opportunities. I spoke with Senator Durbin, who's a strong advocate of people who are blind or visually impaired and disabled, and we need, in our customer service industry, we have clients in medical scheduling, in the medical industry, as well as the payment industry. We provide the services for the Illinois Tollway, for example. We need to have those jobs come back to the United States from overseas, and we're looking for Kamala Harris to help advocate for bringing jobs that are needed. These customer service jobs were pandemic proof. People were able to work remotely thanks to the cloud. People with disabilities working from home, so they didn't have to come into the office comfortable. They were able to continue paying their bills, receiving their wages, enjoying meaningful work during the pandemic. We never shut down. In fact, we added clients. So we're very proud to say that there's opportunity here, and we're happy to share it with others. Finally, we need to ease up on the Social Security disability insurance. Someone can make, a payment is typically $2,590, $2,590, which is about little over $31,000 a year. You can work a $17 an hour job and make $35,000. So together, you're still combined at 80% of the average median income, which is below the 80% mark. And for a family of four, it's below a 60% median income. So you're not getting rich. So why not allow people to collect the SSDI, work, and enjoy life, and have a meaningful life? So finally, and this is something that resonated with Senator Durbin when he visited prior to the pandemic. He was there a week before the world experienced the pandemic. We talked about assistive technology and access to assistive technology. It's criminal that some of the technology that allows people to become taxpayers and not tax dependent is out of the range of affordability for people. Why aren't there any Medicare funding options that's been in bills in Congress that have not passed on multiple occasions? Hopefully we'll get it passed and at least get some tax credits or subsidies that go towards assistive technologies that allow people to do what they love doing and access to information, so including visual information for those who are blind. So let's make this next session and this next administration the time when all of this finally gets done. Thank you very much.
That was great. She was speaking to my heart. As many of you know, I do Social Security, disability, and SSI advocacy. And what you hit on is something that is a frequent barrier. You hit it with SSDI. Where I find it encountered is the SSI asset restrictions. To get SSI, you cannot have more than, if you're single, $2,000, $3,000 if you're married. Meaning, if you have one car and then another car that doesn't run, that's 30 years old and just sits there and is a pile of rust, you're excluded from getting SSI. That's it. That's the game. It's considered too much in resources. That is an issue I come in contact with all the time. Thank you for your advocacy on that issue. I can't tell you how much I personally appreciate it, and as well, so do all my clients. So thank you. Okay. So we're way over, so I'm going to keep my closing remarks to a minimum, but I am going to say this. Alabama, the state of Alabama, State of Alabama Democratic Party, not California Democratic Party, does not have a disability caucus. At least not anymore, is my understanding. Correct? Not quite sure what the reason was. I know it used to, but it doesn't anymore. So, in conversation, I can't instruct the Alabama party to do anything. It's outside my purview, but what I can do is I can create an Alabama disability subcommittee of this caucus. And as of this moment, that's what exists, and that's our newest caucus. Thank you to the state of Alabama, its disabled residents, and its advocates. We're adjourned.